Not every war ends with a victory. Some just stop, burn out, and leave behind a silence so deep even the stars hesitate to speak. On the scorched world of Radanfur, a pilot made a choice that defied every order ever given. A dying city, a hybrid engine fueled by human and alien blood, and a countdown no one could escape. They said it was treason. They said it was madness. But when the ashes of Halora Prime rose into orbit, something else began. This is the story of Captain Arlen Voss, and the child who carried both halves of a war inside her veins. A story about the moment when science met mercy and proved that sometimes one heartbeat can rewrite the fate of two species. Listen closely. Because after today you may never hear silence the same way again. The sky above Halora Prime looked like it was bleeding. Flares rose from the lower spires, painting the orbit in copper light as if the city itself were trying to reach for help. Inside the interceptor A-37 Valor's Edge, Captain Arlen Voss steadied his hands on the flight sticks. The ship trembled under pressure as the biocore engine Mikafo whined through his bones. The sound was alive, half mechanical, half heartbeat. "Velos, status," he said. "Thermal output at 93%, the AI replied. Its voice stayed calm, too calm. Shields holding. Structural integrity at 78. Outside, the ruins of orbit drifted past. Broken satellites, civilian transports, twisted girders from Operation Glassline. Each fragment carried reflections of the city below, still burning, still screaming. For a moment, Arlen forgot to breathe. Halora had once been beautiful. Now it looked like a dying sun. He glanced at the tactical feed. Command channels buzzed. Orders, distress calls, static. One directive repeated every 30 seconds. All squadrons, protect the industrial line. Civilian sectors are not priority. He swallowed hard. Copy, he said, but his voice sounded smaller than the machine's. Hours seemed to blur. The Valor's Edge circled the collapsing ring again and again, smoke plumes rising like ghosts. Each orbit revealed more of the destruction, entire districts melting under orbital fire. A sudden tone cut through the noise. "Velos, isolate that ping," he ordered. Source, Vorn Hangar Complex, Sector Delta 9. One biosign detected, non-human. Probability of survival, 4%. Arlen zoomed in. Amid the haze, a single life signature blinked faintly. It wasn't military. Too small. Too erratic. He frowned. That sector's been vaporized. Could be a glitch. Negative, Velos replied. Signal consistent with youth pattern. Possibly civilian. Arlen leaned back, watching the screen pulse in steady rhythm. For a heartbeat, it almost felt human. Midway through the next orbit, his console flickered again. A live feed from a drifting recon drone showed the Vorn hangar cracked open like an eggshell. Firelight reflected off torn armor, molten floors, and in the corner, something moving. Small, crawling toward the light. Arlen's throat tightened. He should have turned away. He should have ignored it, like the orders told him to. "Captain," Velos said, reading his hesitation, "you are within strike range of remaining enemy assets. Advise return to perimeter?" He didn't answer. Through the cockpit glass, he could see Halora Prime rolling beneath him, a vast sea of orange and black. Every pulse of fire looked like a heartbeat dying out. "Keep the course," he murmured. Minutes passed. The signal on the screen kept flickering, weak but steady. Arlen knew what the numbers meant. 20 minutes before the structure collapsed. Less before oxygen ran out. He pushed the throttle forward just enough to feel the vibration in his chest. Then he pulled back. No, not yet. He forced himself to look away, eyes fixed on the horizon where the planet's limb glowed faintly blue. "Mark that coordinate," he said quietly. "Logged." Velos confirmed. Arlen took one last look at the feed. The small figure vanished in smoke. He exhaled, slow and hollow. "End recording," he said. As the Valor's Edge climbed toward higher orbit, the sun of Radon 4 broke through the haze, throwing a silver line across his canopy. For a few seconds, everything seemed still. Then another explosion rippled through the city below, one more wound in a world that could no longer feel pain. and somewhere in that inferno, a single heartbeat refused to stop. The blast from the surface still echoed through the metal veins of Halora Prime. Deep inside the broken hangar, the air was a mix of smoke, coolant, and the sharp scent of burning polymer. Red alarms pulsed across the ceiling, painting everything in stuttering light. Gravity failed, caught itself, and failed again. Tools drifted like ghosts before clattering down when the field snapped back. A cracked viewport leaked thin trails of vapor into space, each hiss a countdown. Lyraean crawled from under a shattered cargo frame. Her small lungs burned. She pressed a sleeve against her mouth, tasting dust and iron. The world she knew, loud engines, voices in her language, was gone. All that remained was the hum of dying machines and the slow creak of metal cooling. She floated for a second, weightless, until the gravity surge threw her down. Pain flared in her knees. She bit her lip and pushed forward. A dull flash caught her eye. Half buried under debris lay something alien, smooth, silver, shaped like a wing. It gleamed even through the soot. Lyraean reached out, fingers trembling, and pulled it free. It was a human insignia, the crest of the Earth-conquered Navy, edges burned, surface smeared with dark, dry blood. The symbol meant nothing to her, yet it felt heavier than it should. Somewhere deeper, a bulkhead gave way. The sound was low at first, then turned into a scream as atmosphere rushed out. Wind tore across the hangar, grabbing everything not bolted down. Lyraean slammed against a wall, clutching the insignia with both hands. Her feet slid toward the widening gap. She saw bodies spinning into the light, Vorn armor and human suits tumbling together into the black. No difference now. Just silence. The air thinned fast. Her vision blurred. She kicked toward a maintenance ladder and caught it, chest heaving. Her pulse synced with the alarm. 2 beats, pause, 2 beats. The vacuum shutters stuttered once, then sealed. The sudden quiet rang louder than the chaos before. Lyraean sagged against the wall, breathing through shallow gasps. The insignia rested in her palm, edges cutting faint lines into her skin. She turned it over and saw, under the soot, a name etched in human script she couldn't read. The metal was warm. Not from heat, something else. She pressed it against her chest as if to keep it safe, whispering words that only half formed in her throat. "I'll return it, I promise." Outside, another explosion rolled through the city. The light flickered, then steadied into a dull red glow that made the air look thick with blood. And in that crimson haze, the child of an enemy clung to a symbol of the dead, unaware that far above, a lone pilot had just marked her coordinates. Deep inside the broken hangar, the air was a mix of smoke, coolant, and the sharp scent of burning polymer. Red alarms pulsed across the ceiling, painting everything in stuttering light. Gravity failed, caught itself, and failed again. Tools drifted like ghosts before clattering down when the field snapped back. A cracked viewport leaked thin trails of vapor into space, each hiss a countdown. Lyraean crawled from under a shattered cargo frame. Her small lungs burned. She pressed a sleeve against her mouth, tasting dust and iron. The world she knew, loud engines, voices in her language, was gone. All that remained was the hum of dying machines and the slow creak of metal cooling. She floated for a second, weightless, until the gravity surge threw her down. Pain flared in her knees. She bit her lip and pushed forward. A dull flash caught her eye. Half buried under debris lay something alien, smooth, silver, shaped like a wing. It gleamed even through the soot. Lyraean reached out, fingers trembling, and pulled it free. It was a human insignia, the crest of the Earth-conquered Navy, edges burned, surface smeared with dark, dry blood. The symbol meant nothing to her, yet it felt heavier than it should. Somewhere deeper, a bulkhead gave way. The sound was low at first, then turned into a scream as atmosphere rushed out. Wind tore across the hangar, grabbing everything not bolted down. Lyraean slammed against a wall, clutching the insignia with both hands. Her feet slid toward the widening gap. She saw bodies spinning into the light, Vorn armor and human suits tumbling together into the black. No difference now. Just silence. The air thinned fast. Her vision blurred. She kicked toward a maintenance ladder and caught it, chest heaving. Her pulse synced with the alarm. 2 beats, pause, 2 beats. The vacuum shutters stuttered once, then sealed. The sudden quiet rang louder than the chaos before. Lorraine sagged against the wall, breathing through shallow gasps. The insignia rested in her palm, edges cutting faint lines into her skin. She turned it over and saw, under the soot, a name etched in human script she couldn't read. The metal was warm. Not from heat, something else. She pressed it against her chest as if to keep it safe, whispering words that only half formed in her throat. "I'll return it, I promise." Outside, another explosion rolled through the city. The light flickered, then steadied into a dull red glow that made the air look thick with blood. And in that crimson haze, the child of an enemy clung to a symbol of the dead, unaware that far above, a lone pilot had just marked her coordinates. 15 minutes after breaking formation, Captain Arlen Voss dropped through the smoke and fire of Halora Prime. The sky shimmered red from molten debris. The heat alarm screamed across his console. "Velos, deploy landing gear," he ordered. "Warning," the AI replied. "Surface instability detected. Oxygen reserves 18 minutes. I'm not staying long." The Valor's edge descended through a curtain of sparks, its landing struts touching fractured steel. The hangar was a skeleton. Half of its walls gone, the rest glowing with residual plasma. Through the hull breach, stars glimmered where a ceiling used to be. Arlen sealed his flight suit and stepped out. The moment his boots hit the deck, his visor fogged with micro-ice. Air pressure dropped another notch. The HUD blinked, 14-degree coals. He moved carefully, flashlight cutting through smoke. Every beam revealed something dead: twisted armor, broken drones, charred consoles. Somewhere ahead, the life sign signal pulsed again. "Range, 22 meters, Velos said in his ear. "Behind that bulkhead." Arlen raised his rifle, stepping over a collapsed beam. Metal groaned under his weight. Then, movement. A shadow darted between crates. "Identify yourself!" he shouted, switching to lingua franca. His voice echoed through static. No reply. Only a thin, quick breath, too high-pitched to be a soldier's. He edged forward. The beam from his helmet light cut through dust, landing on a small figure crouched beside a ruptured coolant pipe. A child. Her skin was pale gray, faintly luminescent under the red alarm lights. Her clothes, civilian Vorn fabric, scorched and torn. She clutched a metal object to her chest. Eyes wide and unblinking, Arlen froze. Velos. Confirm visual. Species match. Vorn juvenile. Estimated age, 11 standard years. He lowered his weapon slightly. "How the hell is she alive?" The girl flinched at his voice, scrambling backward until her back hit the wall. The metal in her hand caught the light. Smooth, silver, unmistakable. An ECN insignia. For a heartbeat, everything else went silent. Arlen's chest tightened. That emblem, he knew it. The wings, the serial number along the edge. It belonged to Lieutenant Mara Denholm, the pilot who had pulled him from a burning carrier years ago. "She died doing it. What are you doing with that?" he whispered. The girl didn't understand. She held it closer, shaking her head, murmuring something in her own tongue. Fear mixed with confusion. The hangar shuddered violently. A blast wave tore through the corridor. Arlen grabbed the nearest rail as fire and debris swept past. Warning icons flooded his visor. "Pressure drop detected," Velos said. "Hull breach expanding. Evacuation required." Arlen looked at the child. She was still there, pressed against the wall, trembling, the insignia gleaming against her fingers. He had no idea why she had it, or why it felt like the past was staring right back at him. "Velos," he said quietly. "Time left before collapse? 17 minutes, 12 seconds. He glanced once more at the insignia, then at the child's terrified face. "Then we move," he muttered. "She's not dying here." As he turned, another explosion rippled somewhere below. The deck tilted, throwing sparks into the air, and above the chaos, Halora's broken ceiling revealed a sky still on fire. The hangar groaned like an animal in pain. Smoke rolled across the floor, glowing red under the warning lights. Captain Arlen Voss crouched beside the frightened girl, visor cracked with dust. He spoke through his helmet speaker, voice low, steady. "Safe. Come with me." The girl flinched, clutching the silver insignia tighter. She shook her head, whispering in Vorn tongue, soft, broken sounds. Then she pointed at the emblem and at the ECN patch on Arlen's shoulder. Her meaning wasn't clear, but her eyes said enough. Fear, confusion, and something close to recognition. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's me." "The bad guys." A quiet hum filled the space, followed by a deep, distant rumble. The deck trembled. Dust fell in thin streams from the ceiling. "Velos," he said, rising. "Status?" "Structural integrity at 19%, the AI replied. "Warning, containment wall fracture detected above you." Before Arlen could move, a section of the ceiling ripped apart. A massive steel column tore free and crashed through the deck, splitting it open. Air screamed through the new gap, dragging smoke, tools, and shattered glass toward the void. "Shit, pressure drop!" Arlen's body slammed against a crate as the vacuum pulled. He grabbed a railing and reached out. The girl was sliding, her feet scraping for grip, the insignia slipping from her hand. He lunged forward, caught her wrist, and hauled her in. The sudden silence after the blast was almost worse. His ears rang. His suit warned of oxygen loss. 18 minutes remaining. He pressed his helmet close to hers. "Stay still." "Don't move!" "Velos!" he gasped. "Give me an exit." "Safe corridor compromised," it said. "Only exit route. Return to the Valor's edge. Distance, 40 meters. Arlen looked toward the hangar bay. His ship waited on the far side, engines glowing faint blue through the smoke. Between them was open vacuum. He glanced at the girl's torn clothing. No pressure suit, just thin fabric and burns. How long can she last out there? Estimated tolerance, 10 seconds. Possibly less. He swallowed hard. One run, 10 seconds? Maybe less, he repeated quietly. He checked his tether reel, then crouched beside her again. "Listen to me," he said, tapping his chest. "Air. Safe. Ship." She didn't understand the words, but when he pointed toward the ship, she nodded weakly. The alarms droned slower now, each flash dimmer than before. The hangar was dying. Arlen activated his wrist pad. The display blinked red. Passenger lock, non-human, denied. He hesitated only a second, then pressed override. "Captain," Velos warned, tone sharp. "This violates Fleet Biosafety Code." Arlen's voice was calm, almost tired. "Then write me up when we're both dead." He sealed the command. The lock turned green. For a moment, everything held still, the red lights pulsing slower and slower, as if time itself hesitated to keep watching what came next. Outside, Halora burned quietly. Inside, one human and one alien prepared to run through the last 10 seconds they might ever have. The comm channel crackled to life. Through static, a familiar voice came cold and even. "Admiral Rhea Corrin. All pilots, final withdrawal," she said. "Anyone remaining in Halora airspace will be marked lost." With honor. Her words carried no grief, no hesitation, just procedure. Arlen stood in the half-collapsed hangar, listening as if she were reading his obituary in advance. "Velos," he murmured. "Confirm signal source, Admiral Corrin. ECN flagship Resolute Dawn. Transmission verified." So that was it. The fleet was pulling away. Halora was finished. The red glow from the ceiling flashed across Liren's face. She clutched the insignia close, eyes wide, waiting for his next move. Arlen opened his mouth, but stopped when a second frequency bled into the channel, deeper. "Guttural, laced with static." "Unknown origin," Velos warned. The voice came through, rough, in the harsh cadence of the Vorn Dominion. "High Warlord Kareth Drawl, purge the broken hangars," the voice commanded. "Detonate all compromised cores. Let the traitors burn with the enemy." Arlen froze. The words needed no translation. He glanced at the girl. She stared back, trembling, not understanding that her own people had just signed her death sentence. "Velos," he said tightly. "Overlay both transmissions." The AI obeyed. Two voices echoed together in his ears, Corrin and Drawl, one human, one alien, both ordering death from different skies. Detonation radius overlaps this sector in 12 minutes, Velos calculated. No safe path through the hangar perimeter. Of course not, Arlen muttered. He looked at Liren again. Her small hands were blackened with soot, her breathing shallow. The insignia glimmered faintly in her grip. He crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "You don't even know what that symbol means, do you?" She tilted her head, confused. He sighed. "They're all the same. Different flags, same blindness." The hangar floor trembled again. The alarm shifted tone, a deeper pulse now, the rhythm of countdowns. Arlen turned toward the airlock where his ship waited, its lights dim through the drifting smoke. He knew the risk. He also knew he couldn't walk away now, not after what both sides had just chosen. He touched the insignia in Liren's hands, closing her fingers around it. "Hold on to that," he said quietly. "It used to mean something." He rose, stepping to the edge of the open hatch. Beyond it, the sky of Halora Prime burned in slow collapse. Towers folding into flame, atmosphere glowing like molten glass. "If I die here," he said under his breath, "at least it'll be as a man, not as a tool." Velos paused for once before replying, as if the machine understood. "Manual control engaged," it said softly. The Valor's edge hummed, engines cycling to life. The deck shook beneath them as another explosion rippled through the city. Only 30 minutes remained before the hangar fell out of stable orbit, and one man's defiance became the last human heartbeat on Halora. The orbital clock on Valor's edge blinked in red. 27 minutes left before structural drift. Every sound inside the hangar felt sharper, like the metal itself was counting down. Captain Arlen Voss sealed his helmet and knelt beside Liren. Her breathing was shallow, her face streaked with ash. "Suit check," he said. Velos scanned with a soft hum. Civic-grade fabric, zero insulation. Tolerance under vacuum, 20 seconds maximum. Arlen exhaled slowly. "That's not enough." He looked toward the outer corridor, the one path back to the ship. The vacuum beyond shimmered faintly through the shattered bulkhead. No atmosphere. No second chances. Any internal route left? "Negative," Velos answered. All interior corridors collapsed during detonation. He pressed his gloved hand against the floor, feeling the vibration of weakening gravity locks. The hangar was dying, losing air molecule by molecule. Arlen turned to Liren and pointed toward the distant silhouette of the ship. "That's home," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but she followed his hand, gaze flicking to the blue glow of Valor's edge. Then she looked back at him and shook her head, tiny, defiant. Arlen gave a tired half-smile. "You really want to stay in this hell?" The deck groaned beneath them. Dust floated upward before falling again as the gravity field stuttered. Velos's tone darkened. "Captain, oxygen in your suit at 68%. Recommend departure immediately." He ignored it. Instead, he opened the maintenance console on his wrist. The BioCore engine MKV link shimmered onto the HUD. He entered manual override commands. "Velos, initiate minimal output protocol," he said. "That mode is reserved for stealth operations," the AI replied. "It will destabilize the core's biotissue balance." "Just do it." "Under protest," Velos muttered. Almost human. The hum of the engine deep within the ship changed pitch, dropping from a roar to a heartbeat. The noise wasn't mechanical. It was organic, like a pulse buried in metal. The ship's radiators dimmed, drawing less attention from orbiting Vorn sensors. "Thermal signature reduced by 78%, Velos reported, but maneuverability now below safe limits. "I'll take slow over dead." A faint light blinked red on his visor, BioCore stress increasing. He scrolled through the diagnostic feed. The living membrane of the engine, a network of gene-forged tissue, was folding in on itself, struggling to regulate temperature. Projected necrosis risk, 62% if sustained beyond 15 minutes, Velos warned. Arlen stared at the numbers. "What happens if it fails?" "The ship loses thrust vectoring and life support," Velos answered flatly. He looked at Liren again. She sat quietly now, still gripping the insignia of the fallen. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes, those strange violet eyes, watched him without blinking. For a moment he thought of Mara Denholm, the pilot whose insignia that was. The woman who'd once dragged him out of a fire just like this one. He clenched his jaw. Better the core dies than us. The console lights dimmed, switching to emergency amber. A low pulse reverberated through the ship's hull, slower than before, like the bio-core was holding its breath. Time slipped. Minutes bled together. The countdown dropped to 25, then 24. Outside the viewport, Halora Prime rotated beneath them, its burning horizon flickering through clouds of metallic dust. Velos spoke again, softer now. "Captain, maintaining this configuration will shorten mission endurance by 40%. Arlen checked the pressure seals on his gauntlet. "We're not looking for endurance. We're looking for a miracle." He turned toward Liren, extended his hand, and nodded once. "Let's go find one." The girl hesitated, then reached out. Her hand fit awkwardly against his glove. The alarms kept flashing in rhythm with their joined pulse, each blink slower than the last, as if time itself refused to move until they did. The hiss of leaking air filled the ruined hangar like a dying breath. Captain Arlen Voss leaned over his wrist console, hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the oxygen regulator. "Velos, divert 30% of my supply to the secondary line." "Warning," the AI replied, calm as ever. "That will reduce your survival window to 11 minutes. "Just do it." He twisted a valve on his arm plate. A thin tube snaked out, connecting to a damaged coupling on Lyrian's torn suit. The transfer gauge flickered green, then steadied. Arlen checked the numbers twice, lips moving silently. Pressure differential, oxygen ratio, time to cross the corridor. 10, maybe 12 seconds, he murmured. "That's all we've got." The girl didn't understand the words, but she watched him carefully. Her small hands mimicked his gestures, fumbling with the straps, her breath fast and shallow through the cracked mask. He gave her a brief nod. "Follow me." No stopping, no thinking. The ship loomed across the gap, 50 meters away, framed by smoke and stars. Between them stretched a broken corridor open to vacuum. No air, no sound, only debris drifting like frozen ash. Arlen's pulse thudded in his ears. He reached for the manual hatch release. "Velos, seal internal bulkhead after we're out." "Confirmed," it answered. "Route integrity is unstable." He didn't wait to hear more. The blast door cracked open with a shudder. A wave of frigid air swept past, tearing at their suits. Then the world went silent. For a heartbeat, even the alarms disappeared. The hum of his suit compressor faded to nothing. All that remained was the slow, heavy drum of his own heartbeat echoing inside his helmet. He glanced at Liren, her eyes wide, her breath visible as tiny bursts of frost against the visor. "Go," he mouthed. They pushed off the deck. Gravity failed. The void swallowed them whole. Stars and flames spun together as they leapt across the gap, boots scraping the edge of collapsed flooring. For 10 seconds there was nothing but motion, the white arc of their bodies, the silent flicker of Halora's fire below. Then the structure shuddered violently. A secondary explosion rippled through the hangar, lighting the void in gold. "Velos!" Arlen shouted, his voice lost to vacuum. The AI's reply flickered across his HUD. Pathway altered. New distance, 18.3 seconds. Arlen's stomach tightened. That was too long. He grabbed the railing, pulling Liren close. Her oxygen gauge blinked red. He hit the thruster on his suit, a short burst of gas propelling them forward. The motion slammed his shoulder into a steel beam. Pain shot through his arm, but he held on. Behind him, the corridor collapsed. Pieces of alloy spun past like shrapnel, reflecting firelight. Liren's hand slipped from his grip, her body drifting. He lunged, caught her wrist, and pulled her in. She pressed the insignia of the fallen against her chest, her eyes locked on his. There was no fear left, only resolve. Arlen's vision blurred for a second. He thought of all the orders he'd obeyed that led to this, wars that turned both sides into ghosts. He steadied his breath. "Almost there," he said, though she couldn't hear. They floated closer to the Valor's edge. The airlock lights blinked weakly through the smoke. 10 meters. 8. 5. He kicked off one last time, pushing her through the hatch. The suction pulled her inside. Arlen followed, slamming the control panel with his fist. The doors sealed. Air rushed in. Sound returned, sharp, chaotic, alive. Lyraean collapsed to the floor, gasping. Arlen knelt beside her, setting a hand on her shoulder. He pointed to the insignia. "If one of us doesn't make it," he said quietly, "that thing will tell the story." Outside the viewport, the fires of Halora Prime burned slower, dimmer, as if the whole planet had paused its breath, waiting to see if they would live. The airlock slammed shut just as the last fragments of metal flew past. Pressure climbed fast. The sound of rushing air filled the chamber, like a storm forced through a needle. Lyraean crumpled first, her knees giving out. Captain Arlen Voss caught her before she hit the floor, sealing the inner hatch with one arm. The hiss of oxygen roared in his ears, rising until it hurt. She gasped once, twice, then pulled in a full breath. Her small hands clutched the insignia of the fallen like a heartbeat she refused to lose. Arlen leaned back against the wall, chest heaving. "We're in," he managed. "We made it." The deck under them trembled. Dust drifted down like gray snow. He glanced at the oxygen gauge, barely half left. "It would have to do. Velos," he said between breaths. "Bring engines online. Powering up," the AI replied. Hull integrity compromised at 61%. The hum of the biocore engine Mach 4 filled the small ship, deep and alive. It pulsed once, twice, then steadied. The glow through the floor plating shimmered faintly red. "Structural readings stable," Velos continued. "Preparing for liftoff sequence." Arlen pulled himself into the pilot's seat, checking the flight display. "Let's get off this rock," but the screen flickered. Static rolled across it. Then an alert. Detonation. Signature detected. Source. Vorn Network. Arlen's head snapped up. "What?" "Remote ignition confirmed," Velos said. "Multiple blast points beneath Halora Prime. Energy pattern consistent with orbital purge command." The image on the monitor showed a spreading wave of light beneath the planet's surface. Lines of molten orange snaking outward from the city's heart. A heartbeat later, the shockwave hit. The entire Valor's edge lurched sideways. Bolts screamed. The canopy glass fractured. Arlen slammed his hands on the stabilizers, muscles straining. "Velos!" "Impact absorbed, partial. Biocore integrity failing." Through the deck plates, the engine's living membrane thrashed. Its bioluminescent tissue pulsed out of sync, flashing crimson. The hum deepened into a harsh, stuttering rhythm, like a heartbeat losing control. "Core temperature climbing," Velos warned. "Runaway reaction in 11 minutes. Arlen gritted his teeth, trying to steady the controls. "Divert coolant flow, coolant tanks ruptured." "Containment failing." He looked toward Lyraean. She was awake now, still sitting on the floor, her wide eyes reflecting the crimson glow bleeding from the walls. "Velos," he said. "Options." "Only one," the AI replied. "Purge the biocore." Arlen stared at the warning flashing across his HUD. Purge core, confirm YN. If he dumped it, the ship would lose thrust. "They'd drift until gravity took them. If we dump the core, we die," he said softly. He looked through the canopy at the planet below, its cities falling apart in slow motion. "If we keep it, we burn." For a long moment, the cockpit filled only with the sound of the living engine, pounding like a panicked heart. Lyraean reached out, touching the edge of his glove. Her hand trembled, but her eyes were steady. Arlen closed his fingers around hers. The glow of the engine painted both their faces in the same red light. "Not yet," he whispered. "We're not done." He gripped the flight stick hard enough for it to creak. The ship vibrated again, the pulse of the biocore beating faster. Outside, Halora Prime twisted beneath them, its broken orbit scattering flame into the void. Only 12 minutes left. To flee alone or fall together. The cockpit lights dimmed to a pulsing red. The biocore engine Mach 4 was alive, but barely. Its heartbeat thudded beneath the floor, fast and uneven, a wounded rhythm that matched Arlen's own pulse. He tore off his gloves and opened the diagnostics bay. The smell of overheated biopolymer filled the air, sweet, metallic, almost like blood. Lyrian watched from the side, eyes wide, silent beneath the red glow. "Velos," Arlen said. "Status of the core's organic layer." "Severe trauma," the AI replied. "Neural filaments are breaking down. Temperature rising past human tolerance." He cursed softly and stared at the display. The graphs flickered in waves, peaks and valleys, chaotic but familiar. Somewhere in his memory he'd seen this pattern before. Then it hit him. He'd seen it in the Vorn physiology files. Their cell structures reacted the same way to heat. But instead of tearing apart, they stabilized by forming microfolds that redistributed thermal stress. "Velos," he said slowly. "Compare the oscillation band to Vorn neural tissue from the Raiden conflict archives." Processing static filled the air for a moment. Then the answer came. "Resonance overlap, 86%, Arlen exhaled. "Damn it!" "Of course." Lyrian tilted her head, not understanding the words but reading the change in his voice. He looked at her, really looked. At the faint scales near her temples, the subtle texture beneath her skin that marked her as part Vorn. He hesitated, voice low. "Your kind can survive heat and radiation. Your blood, your cells, they don't panic under pressure." She didn't respond, only blinked. The hum of the dying engine filled the silence between them. "If I could seed a trace of that resilience into the core's living layer..." He stopped himself, jaw tight. "It might calm it down. It might buy us time." Velos broke in. "Captain, are you suggesting xenogenic stabilization? That procedure has never been attempted on a live biocore." "I'm not suggesting," Arlen said. "I'm deciding." The AI paused, tone softening. "Source tissue required, living sample. Probability of host injury, high." Arlen turned toward Lyrian. "It would mean drawing a little of your blood. Maybe more. It's risky." She looked at him without fear, only confusion. Then she pointed toward the window, toward the burning planet below. "Halora," she whispered. Her accent twisted the word, but he understood. "Yeah," he said. "It's dying." She took a deep breath, then lifted the insignia of the fallen from her neck and pressed it against his chest. Her small hand trembled but stayed there. He froze, feeling the cold metal through his suit. "You don't even know what I said." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Save ship." He almost laughed, but it came out as a broken breath. "Right. Save the ship." The engine roared again, louder this time, desperate, as if it heard them. Warning lights cascaded across the ceiling. Arlen clenched his jaw. "Velos, prep the surgical bay. I'll extract a microsample. Keep her alive. That's an order." "Understood," the AI said. "Captain, there are 8 minutes remaining before containment loss." He nodded once. "Then we make them count." The ship's lights flickered as he guided Lyrian toward the rear module. Outside, the torn surface of Halora Prime burned like a scar across space. Inside, the red glow of the biocore pulsed slower, like it was waiting for something. Or someone. In those 9 short minutes, Valor's Edge became less a warship and more a field laboratory fighting against extinction. The medical bay was never meant for this. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting the biocore engine to the surgical interface. The air shimmered with heat and the sharp smell of ozone. The hum of the reactor never stopped. It was the pulse of a dying creature fighting to live. Arlen Voss stood in the middle of it, sweat dripping down his neck, sleeves rolled up. "Velos," he said, voice steady but low. "Activate BioLink Channel 3. Prep interface for xenogenic fusion." "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Warning, human-Vorn compatibility remains unverified." "Proceed?" He didn't answer. He just nodded and moved toward the small table where Lyrian sat, legs swinging nervously, hands clutched around the insignia of the fallen. Her eyes followed him everywhere, curious, afraid, trusting. He knelt in front of her. "Listen," he said softly. "I'm going to take a little of your blood. It will help the ship, help both of us." She tilted her head, not fully understanding, but his tone made her relax. He tried to smile, but it felt brittle on his face. "You'll feel a sting," Just for a second. He guided the injector toward the soft spot on her arm. The faint green hue of Vorn bioluminescence glowed beneath her skin. When the needle pierced, she flinched, but didn't pull away. "Good," he whispered. "Brave girl." The display on the panel flared to life. A small stream of blood, rich with iridescent cells, entered the containment vial. Velos, synthesized nanocarrier. Mix ratio 10:1 human to Vorn, mixing. Ready, the hum deepened. The biocore engine on the other side of the bulkhead pulsed, the sound of a heart trapped inside steel. He slid the vial into the slot, locking it into the port that linked to the living tissue of the reactor. The ship seemed to shudder as if aware of what he was doing. Inject. The line filled with a faint golden shimmer. Lyrian watched, her reflection trembling in the glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the monitor spiked, temperature falling, resonance patterns aligning. "It's working," Velos said. "Core stability increasing, 42% and climbing." Arlen leaned against the console, exhaling. "Keep feeding the signal. Monitor her vitals." The air grew thicker. Heat radiated from the walls like open furnace doors. Minutes passed. The numbers rose 50, 60, 70, but Lyrian's breathing changed. Shallow, uneven. Her skin glistened with sweat, the faint glow beneath it growing brighter. "Captain," Velos said, voice almost hesitant. "Her temperature has exceeded 39 degrees Celsius." Arlen looked over. "Keep monitoring. She'll hold." "Core stability at 78%, the AI continued. "Her cell activity is accelerating beyond expected tolerance." He moved closer. The veins in her neck pulsed with light, tiny waves of bioenergy transferring through the interface line. It was beautiful and horrifying all at once. Lyrian's voice was weak, almost a whisper. "Hot, I know," Arlen said. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Just a little longer." The hum in the deck intensified. The biocore engine answered back, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The red glare turned to gold. Then Velos spoke again. "Warning. Her core temperature is 42.3. Stress index critical. Recommend termination of fusion." Arlen froze. He looked at the display. 80% stability. The ship's tremors had nearly stopped. For the first time since Halora began breaking apart, the data looked hopeful, but her pulse was fading. "If I stop now, we might lose the ship," he said quietly. "If you continue," Velos replied, "you lose her." He closed his eyes. The sound of both heartbeats, hers and the reactor's, echoed in his ears. He remembered what she had said before, "Save the ship." He shook his head. "Not like this." He slammed the switch. The transfer stopped. The gold glow dimmed instantly. Velos confirmed softly, "Fusion link disengaged. Core stability holding at 80%. The hum steadied, weak but alive." Arlen sank to his knees beside Lyrian. Her breathing was shallow, but she was alive. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his chest. "You did it," he murmured. "You saved us." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused but aware. She tried to smile. The cabin lights flickered. The air was still unbearably hot. 5 minutes had passed. The smell of ozone lingered like burnt copper. Arlen sat against the wall, holding her hand. 80%, he said softly. "That's enough. The ship needs to live, but the kid has to breathe." Outside, Halora Prime burned slower now, the fires reflecting in the glass like embers refusing to die. Time moved differently inside the Valor's edge. Each second stretched thin, glowing with the fragile warmth of survival. The ship was quiet, too quiet. Only the deep breathing of the biocore engine filled the air, steady now, like a wounded heart that refused to stop. Arlen's head leaned back against the console. Beside him, Lyrian lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, skin pale but alive. He wiped a streak of soot from his face and whispered, "We made it through the fire." Then the comms lit up. "All Earth-conquered units," came Admiral Rhea Corrin's voice, flat and resolute. "Initiate final withdrawal. Halora Prime will be purged in 3 minutes. No exceptions. Execute." The words froze him. On another channel, overlapping, came a deeper, rougher voice. High Warlord Kareth drawl of the Vorn Dominion. Detonate the remaining sectors. Let their machines burn with our dead. Leave nothing breathing, 2 orders. Same intent. Arlen stared at the comms display, watching both signals blink red in perfect sync. Velos, he said, his voice a whisper. That covers the entire orbital ring, doesn't it? Yes, Captain. Both fleets intend total sterilization. Estimated impact radius, 200 kilometers. Escape vector, none. He laughed low and dry. Different sides. Same blind insanity. The AI didn't respond. He turned his chair toward the viewport. Outside, Halora Prime split open in slow motion, plates of the orbital city tearing free, fires spilling into space. The planet's thin atmosphere shimmered like a dying flame. Liren stirred, eyes half open. Go? She murmured. Arlen shook his head. If we go now, we die faster. He stood, pulling himself toward the pilot's seat. His hands hovered over the manual controls, sweat glistening along the edges of his gloves. Velos, he said. Plot the structural fault lines of the orbital frame. I need the weakest spot. A pause, then the AI replied. There's a fracture near the equatorial grid. Collapsing segment. If you breach it, you might escape the detonation wave. Might. Probability of survival, 14%. He smiled faintly. I've done worse. He looked back at Liren. She watched him, clutching the insignia of the fallen to her chest. Her expression was unreadable, too calm for a child who'd seen the end of a world. He touched the insignia gently. You keep holding on to that, yeah? It's proof something human survived here. Then he gripped the throttle. Velos, override all safeties. Route everything into the engine. If it burns, let it burn fast. Confirmed. The Valor's edge came alive again, the deck vibrating beneath his boots. Red light flooded the cockpit as the biocore engine screamed back into full power. The hull groaned. Organic plating rippled like tense muscle. Through the viewport, the collapsing city loomed, a sea of glowing debris and molten shards. 3 minutes, Velos said. Arlen pushed the throttle forward. Then let's give them something worth remembering. The ship dived. Metal screamed. Fire swallowed the windows. The Valor's edge tore through the structure of Halora's orbital spine, carving a glowing scar through the collapsing lattice. In that moment, Arlen felt the ship become part of him, every vibration, every tremor, every heartbeat. Behind him, Liren whispered something in her own tongue, soft and musical. He didn't understand the words, but the tone felt like a prayer. Velos, he said, voice trembling. Open the public channel. Broadcast all frequencies. Ready. He uploaded a single file. No words. No coordinates. Just a short image. Liren sitting in the red light, clutching the human insignia against her chest, eyes open toward the burning sky. Send it, he said. Transmitting now. Across both fleets, human and Vorn, the image appeared on tactical screens for a single silent second. No speech, no message. Just the face of a child who shouldn't have survived. Arlen closed his eyes. Whatever happens next, let them see her. The ship jolted as it broke through the last layer of wreckage. The core roared behind him, alive, trembling, defiant. The minute hand on the tactical clock slipped to the mark of 3, and for one suspended heartbeat, between 2 dying worlds, a fragile spark of hope broke through the smoke. The clock on the console showed 2 minutes left on Halora's war timer. Outside the viewport, the city orbit was tearing itself apart, its steel veins glowing like rivers of fire. Captain Arlen Voss gripped the throttle. Velos, he said quietly, give me full power. Everything the biocore can take. Warning, the AI replied. Stability at 80%. Exceeding threshold will cause irreversible cell collapse. Arlen's jaw tightened. Then we collapsed together. The Valor's edge screamed to life. A halo of plasma bloomed around the ship, wrapping it in molten light. The hybrid biocore engine, part human, part Vorn, roared like something half alive. Liren stirred beside the bulkhead, still pale, clutching the insignia of the fallen. Her voice was a faint whisper. Hot, too hot. I know, Arlen said. Hold on, he pushed the throttle. The deck shuddered. Metal strained. The whole world outside blurred into streaks of gold and red. For a brief moment, they were flying through Halora, not above it. Collapsed towers drifted like islands of flame. Chunks of orbital plating spun past, glowing at the edges where atmosphere met vacuum. Trajectory locked, Velos reported. Exit corridor in 40 seconds. Reactor core temperature at 1,700 Kelvin. Keep it steady. A shockwave rippled through the hull. The cockpit lights flickered. Arlen's hands gripped tighter on the controls. The smell of burning polymer filled the cabin. Sparks danced along the panels like fireflies. Damage report! Starboard armor, breached, Velos said. Internal shielding compromised. Arlen's eyes flicked to the monitor. The damage map showed 2 sections critical, the cockpit and the rear bay where Lyran lay. He could divert the armor plating to protect one of them, but not both. He swallowed hard. Velos! Reroute the shield to Section 5. Captain, that exposes your command cabin? I said reroute it. A pause. Then a soft acknowledgement. Rerouting complete. The lights dimmed further. The heat surged. The viewport shimmered. A hairline crack spreading across the glass. Outside, a support beam, hundreds of meters long, spun toward them, glowing white-hot. Impact in 3 seconds, Velos warned. Arlen pulled the yoke, the ship twisting violently. The beam scraped the hull, tearing half the stabilizer away. Starboard wing gone, Velos reported. Doesn't matter. Just need one. He could feel the vibration in his bones. The hybrid core was thrumming too fast, the pulse irregular, half biological panic, half mechanical rage. Core stress, 97%, the AI said. Almost there, he muttered. Just keep breathing, damn it. Time slowed. Every second stretched thin. The planet below was no longer a sphere. It was a wound bleeding light into space. The orbital lattice ahead collapsed in a chain reaction, throwing debris across their path. The exit corridor was gone. Velos, alternatives? None. All safe vectors eliminated. Arlen slammed his fist against the console. Then we make one. He yanked the controls, forcing the Valor's edge nose down into the debris field. Metal screamed. The hull peeled open. Alarms howled. Lyrian's cry cut through the roar. Stay down, he shouted. The biocore flared red, then white, its synthetic veins glowing like molten roots. The energy plume erupted behind them, half plasma, half bloodlight. The ship surged forward, through the wreckage, carving its own path. For a few seconds, there was only silence and light. Then suddenly darkness again. Velos. Report. Starboard frame destroyed. Core containment holding. External temperature decreasing. You are outside Halora's orbit. Arlen exhaled, chest heavy. He looked out the cracked viewport. Behind them, the remains of Halora Prime ignited in a slow, silent bloom, a city consumed by its own creation. Lyrian opened her eyes, weak but alive. She whispered, "We out?" He nodded. "We made it." Her hand found his arm. "You hurt?" He glanced down. Blood soaked his sleeve, but he only smiled faintly. "Just another scar." The comm hissed with static. Somewhere far behind, a low rumble echoed through space, the sound of an entire world collapsing. Arlen stared at the expanding light and whispered to himself, "That's what it costs to fly through fire." 2 minutes had passed, and in those 2 minutes, a planet had died, but something human had survived it. The stars were still burning behind them. Halora's debris field glowed like a sea of dying embers. Inside the shattered cockpit of the Valor's Edge, alarms whispered instead of screamed, a strange kind of peace after so much noise. Captain Arlen Voss adjusted his collar mic. His voice came out rough, dry, almost hollow. "Velos, give me a perimeter scan. What do we have out there?" The AI replied at once. Multiple signatures detected. Earth-conquered Navy approaching from the upper hemisphere. Vorn Dominion units converging from below. Both are targeting us. He glanced at the radar screen. 2 concentric webs of red dots bloomed across it, closing from opposite sides. Range, 8,000 kilometers in closing. "All weapon systems hot." He let out a long breath. "Of course they are." Across the cockpit, Lyran stirred, still wrapped in a thermal blanket. The faint violet light from the biocore engine painted her face in ghostly hues. She whispered, "They fight again?" "Yeah," he said softly. "They always do." A tone cut through the static. 2 targeting locks, simultaneous, perfect. "Both fleets have acquired firing solutions," Velos reported. "Time to impact. 22 seconds once engaged." Arlen stared at the flashing indicators. Both sides, his own people and hers, had decided that whatever survived Halora wasn't meant to exist. He spoke under his breath. "Different flags, same blindness." Lyraean's small hand brushed the air, pointing weakly toward the viewport. Her eyes, unfocused but steady, caught the faint shimmer of the insignia she still held. He understood. Not words, just meaning. "Velos," he said, straightening. "Open a broad-frequency channel. Every ship, every command deck. Confirmed. You are live to both networks." He hesitated, then nodded. "Send the log from the engine core, the full medical record. Show them everything. Captain, that includes classified Concord data." "Exactly. Send it." Static filled the cabin. Then the broadcast began. On every screen across both fleets, on warships, carriers, destroyers, the same image appeared. A child of the enemy, half-Vorn, seated beside a human pilot inside a burning ship. Her hand pressed against a pulsating organic core, part flesh, part machine. Her cells stabilizing the reactor. Her heartbeat syncing with its rhythm. The feed showed no captions, no speeches. Just proof. Velos confirmed, transmission complete. For a few seconds, nothing changed. Then the radar stopped flashing. Target locks vanished. Across the comnet, silence. "Admiral Corrin has issued a temporary ceasefire," Velos said quietly. 60 seconds duration. On another channel came the voice of High Warlord Kareth Drawl, low and deliberate. "Hold your fire. Retrieve the ship. It carries what we lost." Arlen leaned back, exhausted. "They're not stopping because they care. They just want the prize." "Yes," the AI replied. "But for the first time in this war, both sides are afraid of destroying the same thing." He gave a small, tired smile. "I'll take that as progress." Lyran opened her eyes wider, confused by the stillness. "Why quiet?" "Because," Arlen said softly, "for once, no one knows who the enemy is." Outside the viewport, the 2 fleets hung opposite each other, thousands of kilometers apart, their engines glowing cold blue. The Valor's edge floated between them, a wounded thing in the middle of the graveyard sky. Silver sparks drifted across the glass, ashes of Halora carried on the last breath of orbit. Arlen looked out at the ruins, then down at Lyran. "If we die here, at least they'll remember how it looked when the guns stopped." The clock ticked softly on the console. 60 seconds, no shots, no commands, no sound but the whisper of cooling metal. 70 seconds of silence between 2 armies, longer than most lifetimes had ever known peace. Years passed. The stars over Radon 4 looked the same, but the orbit above them was different now. Quiet, unmarked, forbidden. They called it the Halora Silence Zone. No ships entered. No one fired weapons there. Just drifting fragments of metal, moving in endless circles around what used to be a city of light. On the surface below, trade routes reopened. Treaties were signed and broken, signed again. The war didn't end, but it slowed, as if the universe itself had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Tali stood on a viewing deck at dawn, her hair tied back, a faint scar tracing her temple. The insignia of the fallen hung from her neck, dull silver against the dark uniform of the Peace Corps. In her hand, she turned a small fragment of blackened alloy. The last piece of Valor's edge recovered from orbit. "Do you still hear it?" a voice asked behind her. She turned. An old technician from the Concorde, half blind from radiation burns, watched the horizon. "Hear what?" "The hum," he said. "Some nights I think I can still hear it. The pulse from the core." Tali smiled faintly. "That wasn't the engine. That was Arlen." He chuckled, then left her alone with the wind. She leaned against the railing, eyes rising toward the thin line of morning light. The orbit was empty now. No stations, no fleets, only silence. And yet, the space between the stars still seemed to carry a rhythm, like a heartbeat too faint to measure. Official records called Captain Arlen Voss a traitor, court-martialed in absentia, condemned for leaking Concord data. But stories told in quiet bars and training halls spoke of him differently. They said he refused to choose between species, and in doing so, saved both from a greater extinction. Children learned his name not from history books but from whispers. The pilot who flew through fire and didn't come back. Tali exhaled slowly, voice soft as the wind. You didn't vanish, Arlen, you just changed the frequency. Her fingers closed around the insignia, feeling its worn edges. Then she whispered, almost to the air itself. War doesn't stop because of one person, but one person can make the future think twice. She stayed there until the light reached the horizon, until the first sunbeam touched the orbit where Halora once burned. Many years later, people still spoke of that day, when ashes rose over Halora, and silence itself learned how to mean something. Tali stood a moment longer, watching the thin curve of light spread across the horizon. Somewhere beyond that glow, the echoes of Valor's edge still drifted, silent, weightless, eternal. For her, it wasn't an ending. It was a reminder that even in the coldest corners of war, someone once chose compassion over command. And that choice kept the stars alive. If this story moved you, take a moment to keep it alive too. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every story we keep alive reminds the universe that humanity still listens.